And, Craig Ferguson would always like do these cold opens. He just pull people out of the audience and talk with them. And that's how the show started. And then they went into the intro, which I always thought was like really creative and interesting. But I'm sure the execs at CBS were like, oh God, what now? What's going to happen now?
He got himself into some controversies every now and then.
He did. Yeah, he did. He would always drop he was from Scotland, so the expletives, they would just like, what's a coming to go? That's how they would bleep him out. And it was just like, they were just like, oh, we got to be on that button, I guess, on time to kind of get that done. So they didn't get fined. It was after a while, but he was there for 10 years.
Yeah, I never know what to do when people are swearing on my interviews either. I'm like, what should I do?
Should I reciprocate?
No.
Should I cut loose with a string?
What to do?
Hey. Welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Jason. That's John. That's Mitch. And today we have Dr. Charlene Walters, and we're talking about the entrepreneurial mindset. So we welcome Dr. Charlene Walters to the show. Charlene's passionate about how to become more resilient, organize your time, overcome imposter syndrome, which I'm going to want to know more about that. And also, she's the host of a business talk show called Launch, and it's streaming on Amazon, Roku, and Apple TV now. You can find Charlene on Entrepreneur Magazine's Ask an Expert platform and learn more about her at charlenewalters.com. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm so happy.
Quite a list.
Yeah, you do. You do. Like, I pulled all this up and I started researching all this, and I'm like, okay, that and that and that. I'm going to let her finish out. So the floor is yours for anything else you want to add, because I mean, it's pretty impressive.
You covered most of it, but as you mentioned, I'm a business and branding mentor. I have a background in higher ed and marketing. I sort of bounced around at different companies doing different things like many of us do, and eventually launched out on my own as an entrepreneur. I also have written a book called Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur. That's one of my new babies out there in the world, along with my show. And, I like to work with entrepreneurs and business professionals just to help them move forward with their businesses and in their lives. I have 2 kids. That's something we didn't talk about. 2 teenage girls. So you know how dramatic and exciting my home life is here.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Mitch.
Yeah, Mitch knows very well.
Yeah.
How old are your girls?
My girls are now in their early 20s, but I've been where you are. It'll be okay.
Thank you for that vote of confidence when everything's my fault all the time. Yes, I'm 14 and 16 now and holding. So
yeah, there's 3 years difference between mine, so it's very, very similar dynamic. I love my girls. They're very interesting. They got all their mother's better qualities and few of their father's lesser qualities. So I count myself as fortunate in that respect.
Well, great. Mine are good too, most of the time.
Yeah. Isn't one of yours like getting married soon, Mitch, or something?
Well, no, not as far as I know, but she's in a pretty solid relationship. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes that way.
Why are you laughing, John?
He said not as far as I know. I'm like, is there a chance that you don't know?
A dad never knows anything. Okay. I mean, or very little. Usually I find out everything after the fact. So, but as far as I know, it's just a very solid boyfriend-girlfriend relationship at this point, but it wouldn't surprise me if it evolves that way. Let me put it that way. I wouldn't be stunned.
Sounds like you're happy, Mitch.
She did good.
Well, that's good. That's important.
Yeah. So aside from that, because, well, John, you got a long way to go before you have to worry about any of that. Your daughter's like not even 1. So
Oh, yeah. He's still in the happy, nice.
I'm still in the sleep deprived delusion.
Oh, that never ends. Sleep deprived never ends.
Got that right.
Well, we still, again, welcome you to the show, and kind of tell me a little bit about what overcoming imposter syndrome and what that is. I know it's a little bit of an on-the-spot question, but I'm just curious.
Definitely. So in my book, I talk about developing an entrepreneurial mindset. And part of that has to do with having confidence, because as you all know, it takes a lot of confidence to get out there and launch your business and kind of grow and keep moving forward, even when you get knocked down. So a lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome. I think I've read some studies that say that 70% of people actually suffer from it. And it's that feeling, that you don't really belong, that you've only gotten lucky with your successes, that you haven't really earned them. And it's all, kind of baloney, obviously, because it's not true. There's no such thing as luck when it comes to business. I mean, of course, there is a little bit about timing and being in the right place and all that, but really it all has to do with hard work. So if you're feeling like an imposter, something that I suggest to everyone to help build their confidence is to write a list of all of your accomplishments, all the things you've done, have your friends contribute to it, talk about the things they like about you, and hang it somewhere for yourself for those times when your confidence is really lacking. Something else you can do, and I do this when I'm going into a situation where I'm uncomfortable with something new, is just to really practice and prepare. I mean, it goes without saying, but that's why you often do better is when you're in those situations where you're not as confident as those who've been there before. We're all new. We all have those feelings at some time, right? We all don't start off as an expert where we're at. So we just develop over time. So come up with ways to thwart it if you're feeling it. Maybe develop a mantra for yourself. John, you're amazing. You've got this. Jason, you are the best. Whatever it is, I can do this, and just repeat it. So those are some ways you can overcome imposter syndrome. And then just really look at people that you think are doing a wonderful job and see what you can do to emulate them as well.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
In a nutshell.
I've always I had a friend, she would always just tell me, and she was Ukrainian, and so her English was a little broken, but she would always tell me when I would talk about something that was like that, she would just look at me and go, Jason, everything gonna be okay. And
that's a good one.
So I just have that constantly whenever there's something that's stressing me out or whatever. I'll just have that playing, and when I think I'm like, do I really belong here? Because I have had that feeling. I've always talked about myself as a functional introvert.
Okay.
And John is a hermit. No, I'm just kidding, John. But we are. But, yeah. Out of the group, Mitch is I would consider the most. It's not outrovert.
Outgoing.
Thank you.
Outgoing. Extroverted.
Thank you. See, there's a reason he's the creative director and writes copy, and I don't.
It's mainly because I hide behind an extroverted personality to hide my basic insecurities. So
yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. We're getting deep here in this.
Yeah, Mitch.
But I'm sorry, Jason. But I do find it interesting, especially given the industry that we work in, you and me, and you, Jason, Jonathan, where we work in a creative industry where, it shouldn't always be this way, but a lot of times it seems like so much of what you produce, what you create, what you fashion, what you engineer is so subject to other people's opinions. Mm-hmm. We as a rule, we try to couch our product as something that's very, very objective and not subjective. But no matter how hard you try, you're dealing in any creative endeavor, it's always subject to other people's opinions and input. And I wonder, and Charlene, you can tell us what you think, but this industry, the advertising and marketing industry, more than most, probably suffers from that imposter syndrome because you're always having other people's opinions foisted on you or injected in the work that you're doing. There's always changes. Nothing ever goes out the door pristine, or rarely. Given your experiences, would that be a kind of a true?
Definitely. I think that the thing to remember is that you can't please everyone all the time, right? And everything is going to be okay. So you have to kind of go with the majority and learn to set that aside. I know initially I tend to be a little more introverted too, and I've sort of pushed myself over the years to be extroverted. So people will be shocked by that when they talk to me. And I definitely have moved when I take personality tests. But, when I first was getting started with personal branding and I was on Twitter and I wrote something, somebody retweeted my comment with something really negative, and I thought, oh, my first hater. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. And I was so offended. And, it wasn't even someone who was following me. And I think he only had 3 or 4 followers, but I was still like, why could this person do that to me? And then, you have to take a look back and look at the person and decide whether it has more to do with them than you. And often that's what the case is. You have to kind of separate yourself. And I think that's really easier said than done, for a lot of us. But we take the time to see, is there anything valuable in the feedback that we're getting? If we try not to take it personally, I think that's the best thing you can do. I mean, wouldn't you say so, Mitch? Have you had that experience?
Yeah. I mean, you try very, very hard to depersonalize.
Yes.
And like I said, when we're in these interactions with clients, it's all about the end objective. Everything that we're doing, everything we're producing is to get you from point A to point B.
Yes.
Then to point C or whatever. So it's not like, I mean, I have these axioms that they like to quote, and one of the inside the company, and one of those is pretty is easy and smart is hard. So we try to dwell on the smart aspect of things. We're making a machine that works and does something really, really well. And if you start tinkering with the machine, it doesn't do that job as well as you would want it to do. So that's what we strive for. I mean, that's how we try to keep it away from that of the area of just, well, I don't think, or I don't feel. No, it's keep it in the realm of the objective. This mechanism was built to do 3 things: A, B, C, and D.
Well, that's
and
4.
A, B, C, D. It is 4. You're right. No, I was recounting in my head after I said it.
It's Friday. Numbers don't matter on Friday. It's fine.
Totally true.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you get those differing opinions, too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's hard to kind of gain control and say, here are the objectives. I've seen that before, being a client. People will take an idea on the client side and just kind of tweak it so that it's not even good anymore, right? And I'm sure that happens to you a lot when we start tinkering too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing with imposter syndrome too, in the entrepreneur context, or really just in the professional, is, and I don't want to rail against social media because I love it, and I think it's done good things in the world too. But everybody gets on social media to. Nobody, or rarely do you see people share the really bad things that happen to them, the business failures, the mistakes they made professionally, whatever it may be. You just get this projection of they're doing everything right. They've got a 7-figure business. They, just got on the best podcast in the world, or just got interviewed, whatever it may be. And you start to innately compare yourself to that. It's false image. And so you get this imposter syndrome that, well, I'm not at that level, or what I'm doing isn't quite as good, and people are going to see through that eventually. That's the big thing about imposter syndrome. I think that it makes it differ from other types of, it's really just a form of like anxiety, is you really feel like people are going to see through the facade, and that undermines your confidence in what you're doing. And I think that's, social for all it's good. It also has created that kind of fear of missing out, the false comparisons.
Definitely, and we've glamorized entrepreneurship. Everybody sees these like instant success stories, but you're right. They haven't seen the 10 years that went on when they were falling down, they were being rejected. They just seeing the end result. And that happens to me a lot. When I'm meeting with new people, they say, okay, I want to do what you did. And I'm like, well, how long did it take me to do that? It wasn't just, I snapped my fingers. If there was some magic recipe or path, I tell you. And the same with everyone. And even, these really extremely successful, extremely famous people, they're still being rejected on a daily basis. You're right. We're just not posting about it. And it can be dangerous to just look at what we see on social media and take it as face value. I think recently I saw on LinkedIn, Jason Pfeiffer, who's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, he started this thing where everybody started posting about all of the companies that had rejected them. And they were listing, I've been rejected by blah, blah, blah. And it was very refreshing to see that, people sharing those kind of setbacks and failures.
Of course, the word failure is a pretty strong word. I failed. That's a word. It's a pretty strong word. Simon Sinek was quoted recently saying, just say you fell. You fell. That's all. It's less of a it's just easier to think of it that way, which made me always think of, Alfred Pennyworth talking to Batman, like, why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Yes.
I always like that, aside from Rises, like, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Philosophical.
It's
Lessons for life.
Those rejections, those times we fall down, as you're saying, they can really get us. And for me, like, I've developed coping strategies. If I feel like, there was one time recently where I had this like giant win and then a little minor rejection. I could not focus on anything but that, minor rejection. So I said, you know what, you're in the wrong mood. You need a break. You have to come back to this when you're in a better attitude. And I do that when I need to reset my mindset. I just, leave what I'm doing if I can, if I don't have anything pressing, and I come back to it when I'm better.
Famous saying that kind of gets thrown around a lot. Don't work on your business, not in your business. But
Yes.
There's not a lot of context that I'm hearing that's applied around that. And so it's awful hard to apply context to something too. Also when you're drowning, because when you're drowning, you're not thinking like, oh, I just need to kick my feet and do it. You're drowning. You're just trying to grab air. So whatever comes near you, you're going to pull down with you. I mean, you know how that, so I'm just thinking like always on those terms, when we engage with somebody that's an entrepreneur, what characteristics that I can spot in them that can be amplified in order to help them get to their goal. Because if they're indecisive, it's really hard to kind of nail down like how we as an agency can help.
Yes.
Because you're just moving too much. I need you to be more focused, and this is what we can do, and then we'll get to the next thing. So
I see it a lot too when I work with entrepreneurs. They have so many goals, so many ideas. They're just like, they want to do everything and they want to do everything immediately, and then they're accomplishing nothing at all. So you have to sort of help, often help them streamline. It's not that they don't know what to do. It's just sometimes they're really overwhelmed, or it's a failure to concentrate on those important things, which, as you all know, is that ability to generate revenue, right? All of this other stuff has to be second. And sometimes that's hard for people to see.
Yeah. I mean, you just, like you were just explaining, I think the drowning analogy is the best one, because you're not going to sit there and think strategically about, okay, how do I swim better? You're going to just start grabbing at things. You're going to, probably bite off more than you can chew, make bad decisions because you have to. You have to take on this client who's not really a fit, but you need the revenue. And that just has a cascading snowball effect that other people, other clients that are a good fit start to get a little neglected, and it takes away from them. So yeah, I mean, the finances part of things, I think it's definitely a struggle for pretty much any entrepreneur I think we've talked with. I think you do a great job, Jason, of understanding where the finances are, understanding that you don't have to know every single minute detail of your finances to make good decisions. You just gotta have a good handle on the high level stuff, at least at the stage that an early company is. I think people struggle with the financial part because that's what enables them to unlock the ability to fill their weaknesses. And if you can't, we see a lot of entrepreneurs who I think mistake or kind of put up a facade of drive, but they're actually just focusing on their weaknesses, when in reality they need to hire to fill those and then double down on what they're good at. I think that's financially you have to be in a good spot to be able to do that. And I think that's the kind of chicken and egg thing that definitely all startups tend to face.
Yeah. You also mentioned how to better organize your time. What are some examples and some wisdom that you can, share?
In terms of organizing? Yeah, that's a tough one for all of us, particularly now that we're all working from home. I've been working from home for years, so I'm sort of used to it. But I think the most important thing that you can do is really to organize your day as much as possible. Of course, like try to dedicate certain hours to your business, because as an entrepreneur, that's your baby. You could just keep working, particularly now, into the wee hours of the morning, and that's actually detrimental. You'll be less productive. So try to stay within somewhat of a schedule. And then I always suggest, writing down, and I actually write them on paper, but you can put them in your calendar, do whatever, 3 or 4 goals that you want to definitely accomplish that day that you need to get done, and then schedule out chunks on your day and work during those chunks on the bigger projects. I also, something I like to do, it depends on my mood, what I want to work on during a particular day, right? I have a lot of different tasks. And so I see like, okay, I have this on my list. I have this, I have this. I'm not in the mood to write today. Let me work on something else. Or maybe I'm in the mood to record some videos today, or whatever it is that day. I try to kind of tailor my schedule if I can to match that. And then I find I'm much more productive. Something else I always tell people to do is to track themselves, what they're doing all day, actually write it down, keep a list, and you'd be surprised at just generally the amount of time you waste. So just look for those things that are wasting. Maybe you're Googling things randomly on your laptop, or maybe, for me, my big distraction is my phone, my notifications. So sometimes when I really want to be productive, I just move the phone completely away from me so that I don't get sucked into that. And email can even be a distraction. It can help to kind of limit how often you're checking your emails, because your tendency is to see something, drop what you're doing, and respond, instead of, it's actually better if you stay on your task, you'll get it done, and then go back when you have more time to focus on emails within reason.
You said 2 things for me that jumped out. One is, I'm going to hold it up. You can't see it, but it's the iPhone screen time functionality.
Oh, yes.
And I actually added that to my homepage, the very first, page when you open your phone. And it's incredible how much time you spend on your phone. I mean, like 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And I'm like, I don't need to do that.
It is.
And it breaks down, the different apps that you're in, and if they're not productivity apps, well, you're not being productive, which isn't, you don't want to beat yourself up over it. I mean, obviously relaxation, clearing your mind, especially for the type of work that we do, is a necessity. But the other one is email. And I think it kind of depends on what position you're in, what role you're in a company. But for me, for account management, I got 8 people emailing me every hour. The simplest thing that I did, and I don't know if it's something that everybody does, and I'm just behind the game, but I just set up a follow-ups folder. And anytime something jumps in my inbox that needs a follow-up, instead of getting distracted by it, like you just said, I pick it up, I put it in there, and it's out of my hair. I know at some point I'm going to go spend, an hour going through that folder. So that's been a huge help for me. Those 2 things are, and I'm analytical, so I like to know where my time's going. I like to track the activity, like you said. And for somebody of that mindset, I think the ability to time track in your project management system, or use the screen time app or something like that is hugely helpful.
Absolutely. And I think Jason mentioned before too, like the inability to delegate. That's also a big one for entrepreneurs, because they're wasting their time on things that they shouldn't be. They should really be focusing on, revenue generating activities, or things that are really adding value to the business. And if they're stuck in all this other, they've got to learn to outsource, delegate, or hire someone else to do some of the tasks, like you mentioned.
I know Mitch and I feel attacked.
I feel seen
over there. Jason's over there. Yeah, I feel attacked.
Yeah, I get on them about delegation. But I have found that, and I may be wrong. I don't know. You're the doctor. But it's something it's very hard. It's either natural to be able to do that. Like I always try to tell them, like, you delegate, but you don't abdicate. And so, you're still aware of what is being done to a degree, but you have to kind of let it down and trust the other person. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to walk away from something that how it needs to be done and the way it's done, and your process is going to get it done in 5 minutes. But if you delegate it, it may take them a half an hour. Well, to be fair, they've probably never seen it before.
Right.
So, but is it something that you think that is naturally learned? Is it easy to train? Is it too much of an ask if somebody just doesn't know how to do it? You should just stop telling them to do it. I'm asking for a friend.
It's hard to do, but I think it comes down to training them to do it the way you want. And then, instead of getting frustrated if it's not done a certain way, taking the time to go back, explain it a little bit more. And I think that's what happens with even just general manage anybody. is when they see it's not getting done exactly the way that they want or as quickly as they want, they get frustrated and have that tendency to want to take it back on themselves. And I'm sure that's what, you're both experiencing.
Yeah, to a degree, I think so. And, again, I think more broadly, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it comes down to the ability to hire and hire well, and hire people who have a high propensity to learn if they're relatively new to the industry. And if they're not, that they have the skills ready to come in and can be molded very quickly to start doing things. Like you got, like Jason said, you got to be able to trust the person that you're delegating to, and they got to be capable of learning quickly and doing the work very well, especially in this kind of industry where deadlines are top priority. Clients have 25 things going on. They can't, have something 2 weeks late and just be like, no big deal. So I think that's where all the forces come into play, where it's time management, organization, hiring, financials. Is like, it's a perfect storm. But that really is, I posted this on LinkedIn the other day, that really is the only way to grow a company, is to quickly, or not quickly, but effectively onboard the right people and retain them. Otherwise you can't. There's literally no way to grow a company. It's all about who you hire and how well you're able to delegate in order to scale.
Yeah, it all comes down to having key people be able to concentrate on the things that they do best, because that's what helps the company. That's what propels the company. That creates the building blocks for further success. And for an entrepreneur, that's difficult, because an entrepreneur is someone who has the courage and the guts to step out, put their own capital, reputation, whatever, at risk, because they think they have a great, unique concept. And usually they don't have a lot of resources other than themselves, and they become so used to doing it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to give that away. I built this, I created this. This is where it is because of my effort and my energy and what's in my head. You don't know what's in my head. And I don't have the time to sit and tell you, this is what's in my head, and here's how my head works. So I can understand why that's such a huge hurdle for especially a sole proprietor kind of entrepreneur. Where do I turn to? I mean, we're fortunate that we at least have each other. John and Jason and I can kind of lean to each other. What do you think? Tell me what you think. How do you think I should approach this? We at least have that. But for somebody that's a sole proprietor and it's their big idea and it all is on their shoulders, I can understand why that is such a huge burden.
Yep. Well, I think that's probably going to do it for this episode. Charlie, the floor is yours to kind of tell the folks where they can find you, any kind of social media connections, website.
Sure.
The floor is yours.
All right. So you can find me on charlenewalters.com. You can find out information about my show. My book is called Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any place books are sold, and there's links on my website. And you can find me on social media. I'm Charlene Walters, PhD on LinkedIn and Instagram, and C. Walters, PhD on Twitter. Those are the ones I kind of gravitate to the most. Love to connect. And thanks for taking the time to talk to me and to listen to us in our great conversation today.
Yeah, it was awesome having you here. You guys out there, you know the drill. Go to YouTube, search for NerdBrand, find our channel, like, subscribe, click the bell. You can find us at nerdbrandagency.com/podcast. Every Friday, a new show, and come listen to the show with Dr. Charlene Walters. And everybody remembers out there, keep your nerd brand strong.